So we're live, Jen, and we're talking about great ideas that we've already are doing. And then people ask us, hey, would it be a good idea if we did this? Already on it. Or, hey, that's a great idea.
Yeah. I always struggle with that because I'm like, I want to say, hey, I had that idea. You know what I mean? Because it's like, yeah, that is a good idea. I thought of it. And then the other part of me is like, nope, just be polite. Say, yeah, love it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Acknowledge good ideas. That's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
We got lots in store today, Jen. There was a big 90-page survey that just came out by OREA on Sunday. What a weird day to send it out. I got it Sunday morning. I just happened to click on it, and there's so much gold in there, and we'll talk a bit about that. Most importantly, I thought it was pretty cool because they surveyed, I think it was about 1,100 people, Jen, and they talked about where do you find your realtor? So we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
And, And as we said over the last few shows, perhaps we should talk about how you and I do our CMAs and come to that valuation. And then, of course, I love how you kind of brought it all full circle, mining your database.
Yep.
That's what we're getting
into. You got to do it. You got to do it. But it's so funny that they sent that out on the Sunday. Like, I'm actually impressed you clicked on it because, we get so much like spam and junk mail that, it would kind of seem like that was just what it was, right?
Yeah, totally. And if you're looking for it, it's called the, hang on, I got to save the page that I'm on because I'm going to refer back to it. Okay, I'm on page 73. Okay, that's kind of random. However, this whole... I'm telling you, there's so much information in here, and it's kind of put together like a big PowerPoint presentation with lots, me and graphics, lots of visuals, and then there's enough information there if you wanted to read it. 2021 Ontario Home Buyer and Seller Profile. There you have it. That's what it's called from OREA. Anyways, we got an intro to roll. We should probably roll that.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. Before we get into that, I'd love for you to just kind of share a little bit about what you and your coaching clients are seeing in the summer market, because you said it's nice to take a breath and it's a little bit slower now, but I want to understand what that means.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I think I had some coaching calls earlier, and two separate times today we had this conversation that our agents were discussing that they launched a new listing, and they weren't getting as many showings as they thought they were going to get. They weren't getting as many realtor.ca leads or sign calls as they were anticipating. So they had prepared their week with that, what we've been used to, that onslaught of agents reaching out and appointments getting confirmed and, all of that sort of stuff, and kind of had a little bit of fear when they're like, what's going on? Why is it not as busy? It's priced well. I know it's a solid price. In one case, it's like the lowest priced property in the area because it was just a smaller property. It should be getting a lot of attention. And so, that obviously led us to the conversation about the time of year, what's going on in our world right now, and then the market and what that means. And so, the discussion we were having was just that the market does feel to be slowing a little bit. Now, there are the odd listing that you still hear about where there's 10 offers and 12 offers and, highest sale on the street and record prices and all that sort of stuff. I'm not saying that's not still happening. We are, however, seeing more of a trend towards things just slowing down, being a bit more, dare I say, normal, Gary? Is that, I don't know, Jen. Is that a fair thing to say? I feel like I'm jinxing everybody right now, but just a little bit more controlled, subdued, a bit more realistic, right? We're still getting showings and all of that. We're still getting offers, one offer, two offers. It's just not what we were seeing. And I think a big part of that conversation is, it's summertime. The kids are done school. People are vacationing. The weather's been the weather. It's hit and miss, but we've had some really nice days. The zoo is open. Canada's Wonderland is open. People are doing family activities, right? I know you went to the zoo a few days ago. We were there a week ago, right? And also we're in stage 3. Restaurants are opening up. People are able to be social again to an extent. And I think everyone is just pivoting at this particular moment, combined with the time of year that is more traditional that we slow down July and August, right? We're kind of, for those of us that have been in the business a few years, we're used to seeing that. Mm-hmm. Some of the agents who've been in the business since last year or 2 years ago, they're kind of freaked out because they don't know what's happening. Like, what's going on? Is that, like, what's happening with the market? Why isn't it crazy? I was like, believe it or not, that was the abnormal part, not this, right? Like, this is actually more realistic most of the time, you know, give or take odd years here and there. But so that's what we've been talking about a lot. That being said, still tons of production happening, although inventory is still remaining pretty low, right? So we're kind of struggling with that balance a bit right now.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to get some feedback too. I know I asked the question in our private Facebook group, is your experience of hosting open houses and what's the public saying and things like that. And we had a few of our agents host them over the weekend. And one of our agents, Haley, in fact, said it was bonkers. Like, there was a lot of people there. And so from that perspective, and I know I live in Stouffville and there was a few agents that hosted them here. And I'm curious to kind of see how that unfolds over the next few weeks. And remember last week, Jen, we talked about just because open houses are typically held on Saturday and Sundays, it does not mean that's the only day.
So, that's right. There are 5 other days of the week.
Yes, indeed there is. Yeah. Don't let those other days get jealous of Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. And I know with Haley too, just through coaching, she was saying that on her Saturday open house, she ran out of sign-in sheets. The property was so busy. She had so many people coming through, and she had to, and obviously with our protocol, you have to have contact tracing and all that sort of stuff. So she had to kind of find ways to do that. She wasn't anticipating that. She didn't really know what to anticipate, but she wasn't anticipating that. And it was extremely popular. And I've heard a few other agents say the same thing. So, I think it's just being able to go out and do things again, partially, and then probably that opportunity to get into the homes that are on the market, and especially newer listings, right? Which is what she was doing. But yeah, I think it is a good opportunity in this market to take advantage of the days, the Monday, the Tuesday, the Wednesday, from 3 to 5, when people are coming home from work, picking the kids up from camp or daycare, they're out and about, have your signs up, right? What can that do? Be in a home for a few hours, have some market information available. And I know this isn't our topic at all today. It's more last week, but one of the other ideas I remember learning about open houses was, instead of calling it an open house, put out a sign in front that says Neighborhood Information Center. Or Neighborhood Real Estate Info Center, and have people come in just to get information on the stats in the market and what's going on, or even set up a table on the front lawn, right? If people don't necessarily want to come into the house, you can do that in parks and things like that well. And you can get tons of leads that way. So, like we said, get creative, but it's 'tis the season, apparently. I think people are excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're watching with us this afternoon or during the replay, and if you want to host an open house, drop your name, put your hand up in the comments, and some of our other agents that have open houses will see that, because not every listing agent has the time or wants to host open houses. So drop your name in the comments, put your hand up, whatever it is. I want to see those names come up, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities for open houses for all of our agents. And it's a great way to build your business and build your sphere, and also get out there to, if we're not asking the public of what they want, then how do we know what they want? Right?
Exactly.
Like
exactly.
We've got to get out there and start asking these types of questions, and then getting involved into our neighborhoods. So yeah, I'm happy to do open houses. Here's Jane. I love it, Jane. Absolutely. If you have a listing, reach out to Jane. We're here to promote, and that's what we do. So well done, Jane.
I was just going to mention Jane, because she posted in our office Facebook group as well, saying if there's any availability. And I think Allison Velchest Chef did as well. A few agents did. So if you are looking for people to cover your open houses, check the Facebook group, reach out to me. I can get you in touch with a lot of coaching agents. We can help everybody. We can make it a win-win, right? For sure. But the one thing I will say is if you're going to do an open house, do it right. Don't just show up and sit there, like make it worth it, or don't do it, right? Give it to somebody that wants to work it, because there's a lot of business to be had if you run the right model.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mentioned to Haley's comment online there, we have such an opportunity to rebrand what open houses, have typically looked like, right, Jen? And have fun with it and fail forward and try things and try new things and all sorts of things. Open houses should be a fun time and make them fun for sure. Okay. So before we get to open houses, and before we get listings and buyers, and let's just jive. You know what? We're gonna jump right into this. And I'm still going with this market mashup because it's kind of what it is. And we'll talk about some of this report here and get some of the information out of it, Jen. Okay, market mashup as we mentioned. This report came out, I believe, the first time I saw it was Sunday morning. And I don't know when the email came out. I clicked on it about 8 o'clock. I'm like, holy moly, this thing is filled with golden nuggets. So it's the Ontario Real Estate Association, OREA, the 2021 Ontario Home Buyer and Seller Profile. And if I scroll down here to some of the info, they interviewed and surveyed 1,421 Ontario residents. So granted, not a huge sampling of buyers and sellers and people within the industry. However, it's information, and it's actually 89 pages of info.
Oh my God.
So they digested this and provided some pretty amazing information. So before we get to it, and if you're watching, here's the question and here's what we're going to answer. Where do home buyers and home sellers, where do they find their agents? I put that into the comments. I want to know, the top resources of where people find their agents. And then the follow-up question that we're going to talk about, Jen, is how does that home buyer or seller research that agent? Because it's slightly different and it's really, really interesting. But there's all sorts of info in here, Jen. There's everything from the buying side, the selling side, moving up, moving down, investment properties, what are you going to buy? Do you plan to buy? Do you plan to sell? All that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's incredibly interesting, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future. I'm going to digest it and do some video series out of it as well. But
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's really, really interesting. Everything from the economic side, what concerns you about buying a home or selling a home. What else? What else is in here? Number of times you've purchased a home, like everything you can imagine. It's all in there.
It's like getting handed 89 pages of content, right? Social media content, yes. Basically.
And that's how I looked at it. When I was flipping through it and I was on my phone, I'm like, I need something bigger. I need an iPad or my computer, right?
I need to be able to see this properly.
Seriously. Yeah. And I kept zooming in and zooming out and getting like timing of a home purchase, your main reason for buying a home, your main reason for selling a home. And those are two obvious. There's typically, it's interesting. They're two different things. And here's the neat part that we'll get into, Jen, is they do it by age category. So the first one's 18 to 34. 35 to 54 and 55 plus. And I'm sure, as you can imagine, the answers will vary, right? Because of where you are in life, right? It's really, really cool though. They talk about COVID too. Has COVID affected the way that you're going to be buying? Has the interest rates and lending affected the way you're buying or selling? All sorts of stuff. The other, like the type of home you're going to buy, detached, townhouse, semi, condo, all sorts of stuff, or sell. So anyways, as I said, I'm going to go through all of this and kind of digest it and pull out some of the golden nuggets. But the first golden nugget, Jen, is finding a realtor.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked you, and I didn't wait long enough when I asked you this question earlier, and I should have, because you did come up with the number one answer.
You should have let me sit in my anxiety for a little longer.
I
I was
know.
afraid to answer.
I could
I
tell.
didn't want to be wrong. Yeah.
I could tell.
But yeah, the number one answer was referrals, right? Your database, basically.
Mm-hmm. So here it
Mm-hmm.
is here, ways of finding a realtor. And as you can see it there at the very top, and I just screenshot this. I didn't alternate. I didn't change this at all. Referral from a family or friend is at 38%. Then you have your internet search. Use the agent previously, and that should floor you right there. Only
I know that's
15%.
always so low. Yeah.
So what does that tell you right there, Jen?
Well,
15%.
agents aren't following up with their clients. They're not maintaining their relationships, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such an
Mm-hmm.
easy thing because that used agent previously turns into the top one very easily, right?
Yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
very
It's
easily.
almost the direct feed, right? That the amount of times I've had conversations with people and I've asked them, who did you use when you bought the house? And they can't tell me the person's name. They don't
Hmm.
remember. And I'll say, I think it was a Remax agent, or I think it was a Royal LePage or whatever, Keller Williams, doesn't matter. But they can't even recall the person's name. And it's just mind blowing to me. It's like, wow, like the deal was done and that was that, right? And it's always blows my mind how low that percentage always is consistently. Every time we have these stats or do surveys, that percentage is low. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll come
Hmm.
back to that referral in a moment. Social media, I thought was interesting. I actually thought that would be a little bit
Hmm.
higher. Now it'll
Yeah.
change. These stats will look a little bit different on how people are researching agents. That's a slightly different question. The one
Mm.
that blew me, actually, it didn't blow me out of the water. That we've talked about this for years and years and years. Is the big advertisement, the buses or the bus shelter here, the billboard. It's only 4%. And of
Yeah.
course, other is
Yeah.
6%. The other could be, who knows what that could be. Maybe the other, if for instance, is sponsoring your local sports team or restaurant
Yeah.
or what have you. I don't. That could be a number of different
Or
things.
open house, even something like that.
Newspaper ad.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't believe that's still making it on the list. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Let me ask you
Yeah.
this question, Jen. Looking at
Mhm.
that, what is the most expensive type of advertising on that list right there?
Well, the billboard, bus shelter, newspaper ads. So the lowest quarter of the list.
Yeah, and that's where
Yeah.
people are spending the most money.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
most money.
That's yeah. That's interesting. It's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We are so excited as realtors and we find the energy, we find the resources. We've talked about this many times before to spend money on people that don't know, like, and trust us already.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And I always think with the billboards and the bus shelters and the, garbage and recycling bins and stuff that it's a great reminder when you already have a farm or when you already have a big database in a localized area that it's kind of just having your face in front of them more consistently and it reinforces the other work you're doing. So there probably is a time when you can justify it. But if you don't already have market share and a pre-existing marketplace where a majority of your clients either live or you've been working it geographically through a farm, I don't see how it would really generate you much business at all because people aren't going to just call someone that okay, 4% of people will call somebody just off of a bus bench or off of a bus or a billboard, but majority won't, right?
Yeah.
They'll ask people that they know and say, hey, who should I talk to? More so now than ever on social media, we see that happening. I'm surprised social media is only 10%, though. I would have thought social media would be where internet search is and vice versa. I would have thought they would have been reversed.
Yeah, it's interesting. The numbers do change slightly after when you get to the research side of it. But
Right.
if you're watching along with us today, I'd love to, we'd love to see where your business comes from. And that's a practice
Mhm.
that you need to look at constantly. So put that
Mhm.
there in the comments of where the majority of your business is coming from. And even if you're brand new to the industry, where have your first few leads and not referrals, first few leads and deals have come from? Throw that into the comments too. We've talked about
Mhm.
this too, Jen. Going back to the referrals, you know that, my entire business is built on referrals at this moment. And
Yeah.
it's an easy one to keep cultivating, as it were, right? Because it's a phone
Yeah.
call, it's an email, it's a text to somebody that you already like, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just being social, right? It's harder, I think, if you're more introverted, it's harder to do. But otherwise, yeah, it's having connection with people that you already know, staying in relationship and enhancing your relationship. That's really all it is, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Here's a great
yeah.
comment by a great individual and solo agent in the Ottawa area, Jean. Yeah, past clients referrals build their deals. Absolutely. I mean, that's
Hmm.
the nature of Jean's business. But you know, having having that sphere that's already rooting for you is it makes this business so much easier.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, the out of the group that I'm coaching, the higher that more advanced coaching agents that have larger businesses, I think all of them, with the exception of one, and they do both. They're all referral. Majority, when we broke down their business and we actually analyzed their numbers and their deals and where their business was coming from, regardless of what they thought was happening, they all ended up being, it's my database, it's who I know. And then, with the exception I've said of one, because they're active farmers and they have market share, so they had a lot of business that came from market share and a lot of business from database. They were both. But otherwise, yeah, it's very rare that we see it be something other than database.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I
Mhm.
know we have a number of agents in our office, Jen, that have moved back or have refocused, if you will, their lead gen back to the referral. And I
Mhm.
was I was actually explaining it to my daughter, and she's like, "Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun." And like it's things like taking them out to coffee, to dinner, to lunch, going golfing, doing activities with
Yeah.
them, and all of a sudden now, because now your lead gen doesn't become a task that you do every day. It becomes, an event, something that's incredibly fun to do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Elena, yeah, absolutely. When you're starting out, you've got to look at different ways of getting your message out there. So keep doing that. But
Yeah.
I think what you'll find, and from the agents that are just starting into the business, you'll find that when people start seeing your message over and over again, it will be your sphere of it'll be people that already know, like, and trust you. Like, yeah, Elena, she's in real estate. I'm going to go talk to her because
Mhm.
you've been consistent with your message. I think that's a fair way of saying that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way. And I think what happens, the only difference between somebody who's 2 years or less in the business versus someone 2 years plus is that the person 2 years less has to tell everybody and teach everybody that they want to be their go-to realtor. They don't need to find more people necessarily, although that's part of what we do every day. But they do need to make sure they're sharing that story all the time, over and over, showing that they're active, showing that they're busy, like almost, I don't want to say proving themselves, because that's not right, but just showing the consistency of being active agents. And when that starts to happen, then your database buys into it, and then you'll see those referrals start to show up. When you're 2 years plus, they already know you've either done a deal with them, they've referred you somebody, or they're seeing what you're sharing. They've gotten your phone calls, your text messages, your drip, all that sort of stuff, your newsletter, whatever it is you're sending out. And so that's already embedded, right? They've already learned that. So it's a little bit in the first 2 years about, yeah, I don't have a better word than training, right? Training the people you know to go to you first.
I think that's a perfect way of doing it, right? Or
Hmm.
saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay, cool. So let's look at researching. Now this slide had a little bit more information, so sorry for it being so small. Researching a realtor. So once they know who to look at or who to talk to, that people want to find out is Jen the real deal, right? And look at the number one there. Interview them in person.
Yeah. Yeah. 40%. That's a huge stat.
That's a
Makes sense
huge
though.
stat. Yeah,
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 it
absolutely.
does.
And
That
then,
makes sense.
of course,
Oh,
there's
there's
the
social
social
media.
media right on cue, right?
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
on cue,
yeah,
Elena. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's an easy one for me. That's one of the first things that I even do when a new lead comes in, for instance, and I don't know them. I'll
Hmm.
Google them. I'll go jump on Facebook. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how I know them. It was one of those types of things, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Well, we said this even a few weeks ago when we get referrals now, whether it's to a restaurant or anything else, the first thing we do is we pull it up online and look at the reviews, right? We look at the menu, we look at the review, or we look at the photos. You know, we're going to a new place on Friday for dinner that a friend recommended to us, and we Googled it. We looked at the photos, we checked out the menu. We're like, yeah, this place looks amazing, and we got more excited about it because it actually does look amazing.
Yeah.
And I think people do the same thing. If someone was to say, "Hey, go check out Gary McGowan," I'm going to go look you up. I'm going to look at your Facebook. I'm going to look at your Instagram if you have it, and I'm going to see if you have Google reviews or a business page or a website. I'm going to check all that out. So, those are things we still need to have as agents to help us get the deal, right? But
Yeah.
they're not the first way that our name's necessarily going to get passed along.
Yeah.
Go
And
go
you,
to a franchise website, eh?
I know
That's
that one
number three.
surprised me. That
Sorry,
one,
I cut you off. I just read that. I was like, oh, I didn't see
that
that coming.
that really surprised me. And you'll see here,
Yeah.
those numbers add up far more than 100%. However, what that's telling me is people will use more than one tool to research an agent.
Yeah.
All right. And
Yeah.
if you look towards the
Absolutely.
bottom, ask about recent transactions. See right there. I think we can talk about this for a moment, Jen. If you're a newer
Hmm.
agent and you're concerned that you don't have many years in the business or experience, it's actually less about your production than more about your service that you're going to provide. That's what that tells me, Jen.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the lowest percentage on there is your production. The highest percentage is whether they like you. Right? So
Nailed it. Yeah.
that's what that's telling you. Yeah. And it's interesting because, I know that outside of KW, I don't know if anyone else uses the disc profile, but if we look at this, you can almost see the disc in action, right? Because you've got, ask you about recent transactions, and that's going to be your detail, your data people, ask to speak to other clients also, your C's or your D's, right? Which are the two least common. And then your interview them in person is naturally your social agents, your high eyes. I'm not going to get too much into that, but it's funny to see you can read through this and see where the population is and break it down based on the stats of those personality profiles. And we know that majority of people out there are a high I or a high S. Those are the two most common, which is super social and system and structure and all of that. And those are the top two on the list. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to see that play out. The numbers play out that way, but yeah, the franchise website really does confuse, like throw me because I didn't actually think that was a big factor at all. So to see that be 30% it's interesting, right?
Yeah. It is interesting. And excuse me, as I look at this a little bit deeper and I look at
Mm-hmm.
the different age categories, it's only 35% of the age group that's 18 to 34 that will actually interview them in person. If you're
Hmm.
55 and older, it's 50%. So you can see
That
how
makes sense.
people learn a little bit differently, right? And interact a little bit differently. Now,
Yeah.
where the flip is, um, it's look for information on social media. That's actually higher at 35%. So a few points higher. But those are the two things that really stick out. So you got to
Mm-hmm.
know we talked about this in the past. What is your perfect type of client? Right.
Yeah.
And understanding that, and then understanding a report like this, and like I said, I'll go into it a little bit deeper on some other videos. Then I'd want to advertise and talk to that age group specifically, especially if I'm getting ammunition like information like this. The other cool thing, and I don't have it up here, Jen, but if I scroll through this report, the next big slide is most important things looking for in a real estate professional.
Mm-hmm.
And you just said it. The number one the number one trait is trustworthiness.
Yeah.
Everything else is secondary.
Yeah.
Everything else is secondary. That's the number one trait. So you got to be able to build trust and a likability, and you'll be, trust me, pun intended, you'll
Yeah.
be an amazing realtor.
You'll be good. Yeah, that's what we always say. They have to know you, like you, and trust you. Those are the three things, right? If you can get into that window, into that box with them, you can kind of guide them in any which way because they're looking for that guidance. They're looking for the expertise that you have. They're looking for you to walk them through the process. Most people don't want somebody who's not going to guide them or educate them. They want that. So they want someone that they trust so that they trust the content they're being given, right? And it makes perfect sense when you think about it because it's such a huge transaction that why would you hire somebody you don't trust? Well, you wouldn't. You just wouldn't for anything. But you also wouldn't hire somebody you don't like for something along these lines because it's a huge thing unless you're an investor and it's just numbers and that's a different little bit of a different conversation. However, for a personal sale or purchase, it's a personal journey. So generally people want to connect with and like the person that they're going on that path with. Because it makes them more comfortable and then also because it makes it more fun realistically, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And interesting, on that same sheet I'm looking at, way down the list, kind of buried in the middle there, is the value when it comes to fees or commission. It's all about your personality traits and your
Right.
service. That's what comes first. That's
Yeah.
what people are, in a sense, buying into, right? Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, great
Yeah.
report. Take the time to read it, and if you don't want to read it, I'll do the reading for you and pull out the golden nuggets, and there you have it. But some good stuff there, some really, really good stuff on
Yeah.
what our clients are in fact looking for in realtors, and not only that, but what they're looking for in the types of properties. So one of the interesting things I said to Jen earlier, there's going to be opportunities to go through here and read it. So for instance, as a quick highlight, I can't remember the specific number, but let's just use 20% as an example, had planned to buy an investment property this year. That on the flip side,
Mm-hmm.
only about 10% of the people interviewed plan to sell their property. So there's a bit of a
Yeah.
market gap there, right? Right, Jen?
Well, people buy and hold, right, with investment properties. So it makes sense. It explains why we get so little of them on the market. And then B, it kind of covers how that demand is just going to continue to grow as you move into the future and we have less and less available properties, right?
Yeah, yeah. Michelle King's
Mhm.
asking a question here. Where can I get the report? It was in an email that was sent on, I believe it was on Sunday, Jen, from OREA. Michelle, there is called the 2021 Ontario Homebuyer and Seller Profile. And that, again, was from OREA. Maybe if you go to their website, it'd be available there. If not, I'll put the link to something that you can download afterwards. I'll figure it out. But yeah, there you go. Great report. Great report. Okay,
Mhm.
Jen, we should move on.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going to CMAs. CMAs. All right. So we thought this would be kind of fun to talk about how each of us analyze properties in a sense. Where do we get not where do we get the information, but what information are we pulling in and then
Mhm.
sharing with our clients? I don't have any slides or anything. That would be kind of more of an in-depth afternoon training session or multiple of, right, Jen? But
Yes. Yeah.
let me ask you this question, and then we can kind of bounce it back and forth. Um,
Mhm.
you're preparing for a listing presentation. This is kind of a broad question, but what information are you showing up with?
That was a broad question.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, obviously, I have the paperwork and things like that, but in regard to the CMA, I kind of I always start a little more wide and work my way to narrow. So I will look at first of all the neighborhood itself. What's going on in the community, just in general. What have the trends been over the last year or so? What's been happening? And then I'll narrow down to more focused information. What are their particular home type doing? So if it's a detached 4 bedroom, I'm going to look at the information on the more recent 4 bed detached home sales, specifically sales. I usually focus more on sales in the neighborhood. And then obviously then narrowing that down again to the most specific comparables that I think will help me find the proper price range for that home. I do look at availables because we need to have that confirmation and conversation about what's your competition look like. But I kind of get to that towards the end of my CMA. I don't start with it because I find it can be very distracting, because then they'll start to like, I saw that one, the basement wasn't finished, or this wasn't, that wasn't. And I don't really want to get into that conversation. So I shift to that towards the end when we start to talk more about our pricing strategy. Then I lean more heavily on what's your competition look like. And then, obviously the street itself from a more micro level, what's happened on your actual street over the past 3 months, 6 months, depending on what the data looks like. So that's usually what I would bring with me. And then, we all have our own way of presenting our information, which is a little different, but that's the data I like to have on hand usually. And I like to go and see as many of the homes as I can, if that's possible, to kind of be able to say I've been in it. At the very least, I'll drive by them and do a street drive-by, a house drive-by, because sometimes those pictures can look real good, right? And the house not so much, and vice versa. So I like to do that in-person research a little bit as well. So yeah, what about you, Gary? What do you bring with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I bring my marketing presentation. So that's two different things for me. And then secondly, I bring the CMA, and that's a hardcover book. I put it right on the table. So they're always kind of curious what's in the book, and I always refer to it. But what is in the book is some stats about the local real estate market. And we talked about that over, I think, on the last call. And then also the CMA, the actual other listings that we're going to use to analyze and come, and we're going to make this decision together of what that valuation is going to be. And I kind of stole this method and tweaked it a little bit from Ben Kinney. If you don't know who Ben Kinney is, look him up. One of the most successful realtors in the industry. And I don't think he's 40 yet, and owns multiple businesses and does, 4,000 or 5,000 transactions a year. And I'm not joking by that.
Yeah. His brain is wired differently. It's crazy. Like the way he thinks is he's if you get a chance, and look on YouTube and stuff, there's probably videos of him giving presentations, or watch them. They're so good. And he's come a long way in his ability to present his thoughts, I would say, from when he first kind of got started. But he's just got such great ideas, right? Even the expansion models and things like that, those all were born from his thought process and him wanting to grow his teams out. So it's pretty phenomenal. He's had a huge impact on the real estate industry, actually, at such a young age, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I was just going to say, so you mentioned that you bring your marketing package with you, and you use like a version of Ben Kinney's package. And see, I'm the polar opposite of that. So I got to shout out to all my people that don't bring the marketing stuff, because I don't either. I talk about it, and I think I was trained more old school, if that's a fair thing to say, that I'm more conversational in what we discuss. I have a package that I leave with them that outlines our, marketing plan and things like that. But I'm not going through a presentation at all, generally, other than what I know I'm going to hit my main talking points, right? That's kind of my structure. But other than that, it's a little more loose, because I've never been good at that. I've never been good at talking, and I get distracted. I don't know. I lose focus for some strange reason when I'm trying to show something and speak at the same time. So.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. So that marketing presentation, again, I tweaked it to a local market here, and it's Ben Kinney's, and I do create it kind of like a conversation, but it is a presentation. I actually open up my laptop and we talk about how we're going to market and sell your home. Then we get into the CMA portion of it. And as I said, I got some stats in it, and Ben will use, I believe he calls it the 5-5-5. So 5 currently on the market, 5 homes that are under contract, and then 5 that have sold. Now, we're in a market where we just typically don't have any pending contracts, or if we do, they're going so fast. So a few years ago, I tweaked it to just what I called is the double 5. I'm going to take 5 listings that are currently on the market that are as similar to yours as possible, and then 5 homes that have sold, same thing. And one of the questions we should have asked here is what are those questions that you do ask your clients, your seller clients, when you're doing a listing presentation? I'd love to see that in the comments here. And at the end of it, I have a value that I think their home is valued at, Jen, and I'm sure you do too. Well, what's the question that you like to ask? I think I asked a similar question.
So we might differ on this a little
Okay.
bit, actually. And this might be where, the way I present my CMA is different to yours, maybe. I know most people ask what the seller thinks their home is worth. That's a often asked question. I don't actually ask that. I never really have. I try usually to lead them more to a range based on how I present the comparables that I have. And then I ask them if they agree with the range. And then they say yes or no. And if they say no, then we pull at that thread a little more. What do you think is different, or why do you think your home is worth more? Because it's never worth less, right? So why do you think your home is worth more than what we're looking at based on the comps? So I guess in a roundabout way, I kind of have them confirm the range and if that's what their expectation was. But I've never had that specific question of, what do you think your home is worth, or did you have a value in mind before I came here today? I know some people phrase it that way. Is that the question that you were referring to?
Yeah, kind of. And Jean has a great comment here too. I'll put up on the screen in a second. Before I even go to the listing presentation, I asked them, hey, do you have a value of what you think your home is at? And I kind of ask it in a nonchalant way, because if they say 2 million and it's only worth 1.2, then we've got, I've got some homework to do, right? I know going in the expectation. And then after we've reviewed the comps, and it's important to get everyone on the same page, because if you're not, then it won't be a successful transaction for anybody. And we've had it a few times, Jen, where one of the sellers, if it's a partnership, they thought their home was valued much higher, like hundreds of thousands of dollars higher. And I simply just asked the question, after we've reviewed the information here, and you've already selected 2 of these homes that are just like yours, where do you think your home's valued at? And then if we know the home's valued at, say, 1.2 million, and if they come in at 1.4, they know in their mind that they've already got to fight for that number. And if they can't, meaning the information tells them otherwise, you're helping to set that expectation. At least that's how I handle that conversation. And it makes someone sometimes that much easier. It's important to keep communicating. Doesn't matter if you don't agree, but keep communicating, right?
Yeah. Don't come to a standstill on it. And a great question that I learned to ask, and I guess in a minute I'll explain how I present it, so this all makes more sense, Gary. But I always learn to ask, what is it about the data that makes you feel your home is worth more? Because in absence of an answer, I like to let logic, as you know, I like to let logic rule with most of the things in my life. And this is no different. So I just hit them with the data first and I frame it a certain way. Usually I find that by the time we get to the end of the conversation, I don't have that pushback. And if we do, it's usually purely because their expectation was way out of whack to begin with. And then I ask them, what about the data makes them feel their home is worth that? And generally they can't answer the question, right?
Yeah. I love it.
But yeah, the way, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, one of the other filtering questions, if you will, that I like to ask, and Jean certainly asks, is what is your motivation for selling the home? Because that'll allow us to have a deep conversation of making sure that they're, hitting on all points. And then obviously that motivation is key to understand, right?
Yeah. My favorite is when you ask that question and they say, well, we just figured if we can get, 1.6, we'll sell. And it's like worth 1.2 or 1.3. You're like, oh boy, this is going to be a long night, or this isn't going to come together. But it's a great question so that you're aware. And just like you, Gary, the pre-qualification questions, right? Like before you even go to the appointment, asking some of these questions, some of them vary from agent to agent, what you like to ask, but having an idea of, what what their motivation is a big one. And then also, are all the decision makers going to be at the appointment? Because if not, I wouldn't probably go to that appointment either, right? If they weren't all going to be there, I would reschedule that, because that's a big one. But yeah, that's a great question. That's probably the top question, I would say. What's your motivation?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good one, Jean. All right, moving on, Jen, because we could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
But I love
We
this next
could.
one. Mining your database. Beautiful. Okay, so talk to us a little bit about what this means, and then some of the things that we can do to mine our database, even if it's 10 people, 50 people, 500, 5,000. I think there's some unique things that we can do here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of came full circle on this, because we started off talking about the stats from that report, and obviously the number one being referrals from your family and friends who live in your database, and hopefully you guys have a database. And mining your database is just another way of saying how you're working your database, how you're drawing the business out of your database, so that it comes into your lap and then into your bank account eventually. And so, there's a lot of ways we can do that. But one of the cool ways to do it, and one of the ways you and I, Gary, both didn't know, but both did throughout the year, was CMAs, right? Now, obviously, we're not talking about a specific property CMA. We're not going into the detail we would go into on a CMA for a seller specifically, but, pulling, whether it's once a year or twice a year. I do it once a year. I think you do it once a year as well. But just pulling the information on what's been happening in their neighborhood, and sending more of an overview of kind of going, hey, it's that, like for mine, for example, I just say, hey, it's that time of year again. I usually do it in January, just because I know I want to kind of connect with people for the spring market. So just to say, here's what's happened over the last year in your home's value. This been this many detached homes sale in your neighborhood. Your average area has gone up by 20 to 30%. Your type of home is actually selling between this and this number, 1.2 and 1.3. If you want more information or a more detailed report, give me a call. I'd love to chat if you have any additional questions, right? And I've always found that will raise the hands of the people that are kind of going, hey, yeah, we were kind of thinking about that. And they'll reach out to you and say, yeah, you know what, I would like a more detailed report. Or like, we were just talking about you the other day. The amount of times you hear that, right? We were just talking about this the other day, or just talking about contacting you. We want to sell in the spring, or someone's moving, someone got relocated, or whatever's going on in their life. And can you come talk to us? And then that's your appointment, right? So that's a great way to kind of find those people. And it's relatively passive, right? You're not being aggressive. You're not calling your database and going, hey, are you thinking about selling? Right? Like, you're just giving them content. You're giving them value, giving them data that they want, because every homeowner wants to know what their home is worth. We all do. So giving them that information, and even if they want to refinance or pull out equity and buy an income property or buy a cottage, or that's the starting point to all of those conversations, right? So it's a great way to open up that dialogue with your database.
Absolutely. It is so easy to do. And if you already have their contact information, I mean, you should, if they're a past
Yeah.
client, right?
Yeah.
And how
Yeah.
easy is it? Just go create something, whether it's in KW Command and in the design section, just, hey, the estimated value of your home, or did you know, kind of like a fact sheet of here's 5 homes that sold that are just like yours in the neighborhood. And if you're not telling them, we say this all the time, if you're not telling them, somebody else is. So be
Yeah.
that somebody, right? And
Absolutely.
it's so easy to do. And here's the other cool thing it'll do. Here's the ripple effect. Let's say you had 50 people in your database that you would consider potential great clients over the next few years, or in 1 year. That would be awesome too.
Yeah.
Let's say you did just 5 a week, right? That's not many. That'd take you 10 weeks to go through, and some good follow-up systems within that, Jen. The other thing that it's going to do is put you in the know of what values are in certain pockets, right? You're always going to be
Yeah.
doing a little bit of research and knowing. And if you do have a good farm area, it'll be easy peasy for you. You just go in, grab those values, and make
Yeah.
it, make it informational based.
Yeah.
And that's the cool part is we always talk about being on the market or in the market. You're going to be in the market with this type of information for sure.
Yeah, the amount you're going to learn from it. And if you work in a specific area, like if you're focused on Aurora New Market and majority of your past clients are in that area and you grew up in that area, if that happens to be the case, so a lot of your database is also in that area, you don't have to do that much work. You're kind of sending the same email to a lot of people. You just have your different home types, right? And like you said, Gary, it's it probably is the best way, with the exception of physically going and walking through homes. It's the best way to learn the market. So if nothing else, it's great for your knowledge base, and you can speak to a lot more homes, which always makes you look a little better when you are at that listing presentation and someone brings up a listing. You can say, oh yeah, that one was only a 3-bedroom, or it backed on the power lines, or it was right beside the school or a cemetery or whatever it was. It's on a corner or T intersection. There's lots of things it could be, right? That or why it's sold higher or why it's sold lower. When you can speak to that, you get to remove their challenges and their objections quite naturally. So it's not a conflict. It's not a script that you need to know. You can just rely on the actual knowledge that you have to say, yeah, that there's a reason that happened and this is what it was, right? Like, again, going back to the logic of it, it's hard to argue with logic. It's very difficult, right? Unless you're in an emotional, heated debate. Then people try to argue logic all the time. So that's different. But when it's that kind of a conversation where we're talking about data analysis, usually that's not the case, right? So, going back to minding your database and your skill set, take advantage of the skills we already have in order to get more business from your database, right? Don't try and go learn a bunch of new things. Take what you know and reapply it in a different way to get more results, right?
Yeah.
Save yourself the time and the stress of learning something that you might not be good at or you don't know that well. So it's going to take you a long time to master it.
That's well said. Yeah. And you might recall maybe 6, 7, maybe even 8 years ago, there was a big marketing trend, and we see it so often now that it just kind of gets looked over. But the marketing trend at that time was click on this link to get your home value. Right. And
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
I actually closed on transactions with that type of marketing. But here's the thing.
Yep.
If people are overlooking that marketing strategy now, then go that extra step. Do what Jen and I are saying here. There's an easy action item. Just go do the home value for them and send it to your
Right.
sphere of influence, right? And
Yeah.
hey, if you send out 50 and one person responds and you do 2 transactions out of that, is that worth it? Absolutely.
It's a great ROI because
Right?
50 shouldn't take you that long, right?
No,
And you
no.
can spread it out throughout the course of the year. If you don't want to do it in one lump, like Gary said, do 5 a day, do 5 a week if you want to, and just work your way through it. It doesn't really matter when they get it. You can be more strategic about the time of year. Now through August is a great time to do this because, again, full circle in this conversation today, going back to the very beginning, it is getting a little bit quieter, and we are starting to see the buyer demand slow down a little bit. We are starting to see things get a little calmer. So you have a little extra time, right? So instead of resting on the laurels of what you've completed so far this year, if you want to have a killer next year, now's the time to engage with your clients who are going to be your fall business, right? So this is a great and easy way to do it. You don't even have to make phone calls. You just send an email.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like, you could follow up with a phone call if you wanted to double down on it. And that could be a care call that just goes, hey, how's it going? At some point, they might mention the email. They might not. And you could say, did you get my email, by the way? Just curious. What'd you think? Aren't those stats crazy? Yeah, I know. Who knew that was going to happen? And if there's no interest, you move on. Right? But it's an easy way to kind of reinforce, hey, did you get my email? If you wanted to add that extra step.
That's right. Jean, you're right on cue, buddy. I pulled up Kelly, our KW system here, which is KW Command. I don't know if it's going to zoom in or what, but
No.
the neighborhood snaps, Jen. Like, send people the neighborhood snaps. So I have a live snap in my Kelly app, and I know for detached homes there are 44 active listings in the town of Stouffville, and boom, you could just send that
Yeah.
information to your clients, and they can click on it, and it's basically live time information. So absolutely, yeah. Use the tools that we have. Use Command. Use
Mm-hmm.
some of the other stuff. Create a follow up
Yeah.
system. A drip campaign is what Jean's referring to here within Command. It's already there. It's already built, and
Yeah.
go use it. Add yourself to it so you know
Yes.
what your clients are getting, right?
Yeah.
And
Always.
right. But there's so many awesome tools that we have. Use them for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
the Kelly snaps are awesome.
Yes.
They're not always perfect in how for instance, we think of neighborhoods here, but it's better than what you're doing today if you're doing nothing.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Exactly. And so much of it is done for us, right? You're really just implementing the systems that we already have. And when we were talking about this earlier, Gary, you were mentioning another email or text that you send out to your database as well that has the kind of the different options, right?
Oh,
One, two,
yeah.
three. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I started this a few years ago, and I didn't come up with it, but I'll take credit for it if anybody wants to give it. But I didn't come up with it. About 3-4 years ago, I started a easy email and then a text campaign, and it was, "Who are you?" In a sense, A, B, or C. A, you're looking at selling in the next 3 months. B, you're looking at buying in the next 3 months. And C, you want to buy an investment property this year. So come up with questions like that categorizes people, and people will respond. Trust me,
Yeah.
people will respond to kind of a fun thing like that. And I think I also, this is where my creative mind gets set out. Did you want me to bring you an ice cream cone? It was something fun like that. Like it was out of the box and different, but it got people's attention, right? So do
Yeah.
things like that. Have some fun with it and ask them questions. Because if you're not asking them questions, how do you know what they want?
Yeah. And you're not really generating any engagement if you're not asking them questions. You're just putting content in front of them, right? So the engagement's the important part. You want to, that's why we always talk about your items of value or your lead magnets, as they call them, that we want people to respond back to us. We get into conversation. And these are all things you can implement on social media as well. I know some of our agents that are more active on social media, I've seen them post that 1, 2, 3 ABC on their stories and that, and people respond and they get engagement that way. So it does work, right? You just have to have fun with it and don't take it too seriously.
Yeah, we should never take
Yeah, the
ourselves too
ice cream cone.
seriously. Yeah, I don't know.
No, no, we should not.
Yeah. I think we can have some fun with that, Sean. What do you think? And the cool part is, we're talking about mining your database. If you follow Jason Abrams of KW, he always refers to it as your data bank or your data bank, right? And that's essentially
Mhm.
what it is. So mining your data bank. If we thought of it like that, perhaps we would do it differently. So anyways,
Yeah.
lots of great stuff today, Jen. Lots of great stuff that we got to cover. That report, I will find that report and see if I can put a link to it in the chat here for people to click and read themselves. But
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm sure you could probably go to the OREA website and dig around, and it's got to be on there somewhere if they emailed it out. You would think, right? I can't make any promises, but you would think that it would be on there. So, if you want it right now before Gary has time to get it up, then maybe go check that and see if it's there because it would make sense that it was.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Okay, my friend, we're off for a few weeks, enjoying the
Yes.
sunshine and enjoying everything else. And
Yep.
what always feel free to reach out to Jen or myself, drop a comment in the comments there, or send us a private message. We're happy to answer any questions, and we're looking forward to a few more live streams in August, and then we'll ramp back up in September. See, I'm already on summer. I can't even think of the next
you're
month.
already you're already checked out. You're like, I can't go past August.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah,
Very good.
I
Yeah. And
love it.
thanks for watching, Michelle. I'll get you that link for sure. And of course, Jean and everyone else that was here today. And we obviously we have a lot of fun doing this because here's the cool part, Jen, is people think, we do this because, it's part of our roles or part of our jobs. But I can tell you, at least for
Mm-mm.
me, Jen, it makes me be in the industry so I can understand the real estate trends and keep up to date with everything, right? That's the beauty
Yeah.
part of it, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We have to know what we're talking about, right? So it pushes us to learn more. And I can tell you, I don't think it's actually part of either of our roles. We just kind of came up with it as something that seemed like a fun idea, and it's been going ever since. And it's great. I love it. I look forward to it every week. So
Yeah, very good. So
yeah.
for Jenn Silbernagel, we'll see everybody on the next live stream. I hope you keep safe, and bye for now.
Bye, guys.